I can be, like I said, like that militant blind person.
Right.
That's like, why don't you know about this? Why don't you know about this? And then I'm like, okay, well, at the same time, like, why would they know about it? Like, I want people to know about it. But at the same time, like, we're all so invested in our own experiences, and we can really only know our own perspectives unless we challenge our way of thinking. And I think for the most part, people don't want to challenge the way they're thinking. So, how much can I really fault people?
Hello and welcome. This is Self-Control, How to Build a Better Life. The podcast that inspires you to take control of your mind and your mindset to go forward and build a life that you want to live. My name is Patrick Strevens. On this show, we'll go on a journey together, a journey to peace of mind, a journey to a better life. I'll never tell you how to think, how to act, what to believe, but I want to share with you tips, tricks, behaviors, thought patterns that have improved my life over the years. I want to hear about people who are doing the same, and that starts right now. Joining me in conversation on this episode is a young lady who's living and working in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. She goes by her online persona, Blind Charity. And while she's no longer active on Twitch or OnlyFans, she still uses the tagline, "The charity that benefits one blind girl and therefore the world." Now, I mention this because in a way, that's the ethic or the jumping off point for this show. I'm skeptical about changing the world. I'm skeptical that any one person's actions could change the world. And yet, I also believe if you do want to change the world, you have to change yourself. So it's true then. Anything that benefits me, or you, or charity, does indeed benefit the world. I want you to pay attention to two things in this conversation. Number one, this idea of living our values. Charity, she's an advocate first and foremost. When a traumatic brain injury left her with greatly reduced visual field, some would say blind. In fact, she would say blind and brain injured. In that state, many of us would crumple. But instead, Charity decided to advocate, to educate. But what does it mean to change the world? What does it mean to advocate for a better world? I want you to pay close attention to the way we talk about living your values. Rather than virtue signaling for money or mouthing off on social media for clout, what does it mean to live your values? Second thing I want you to pay attention to is the idea of identity. In today's political, cultural, social climate, so often our identity is based on an in-group or out-group belonging. You're black, you're white, you're left, you're right, etc. So I asked Charity, you're part of the world's largest minority group, the disabled. How does that inform how you see yourself? And her answer was very illuminating. It was nuanced. In a way, it almost escaped the qualities of language because she basically said that it was everything and nothing. But I don't want to put words in her mouth. I want you to listen for yourself. If you've come to this show looking for a better life, I can tell you better is possible in a big way. And if you've come to this show looking for a better life, certainly you've thought about your identity. You've thought about how you see yourself, who you are. These are huge questions. We might spend a lifetime trying to answer them. But I'd caution you, I suppose, as much as I don't want to tell anybody how to see themselves. How do we base our identity? What do we base our identity on? What does it mean to be a part of a group? What does it mean to think about what people think about us? This is part one of my conversation with Blind Charity. I'll release part two next week, and in the coming days, I'll have a follow-up episode to this one where I will further discuss these ideas of living our values and identity. This was a lot of fun. This was quite a few months ago that I recorded this, but it was finally time to release it and for it to see the light of day. Enjoy it. I know I did. We'll be back to talk more about it. I hope you enjoy meeting and listening to Blind Charity. All right. Well, Charity, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to you and learning a little bit about your life and your experiences and your outlook. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk. I love to talk.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. Has that always been the case, or you've become a talker as you've grown, or?
I'd say it's a little of a combination of two different things. I think I've definitely always been a talker, always loved communicating. But then I definitely think there is a brain injury aspect that makes me lack a filter, which then makes me like talking more.
Interesting. Do you ever get into a situation where it's like you're talking, you're like, I should stop talking? Or is that not part of the...
No, that's not quite part of it because I do love listening as well.
Sure. So you just like the input and the output then.
That's
Both cool.
Ways.
Both ways. Okay. There we go. Well, let's say quickly before we go down that road, just thanks to Walter Aliaga, who recommended you to me. He was on this show back in October. I learned a lot from Walter, and I'm glad that we were able to make this work. So shouts out to Walt.
Yeah, I love Walter. He's like one of my closest dearest friends. So
okay.
Shout out to Walter.
Shout out to Walter. Oh, he's now forced to watch this and share it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Exactly.
So how do you know Walter? In a professional or like just a friendship thing first?
Well, now it's definitely like friendship. Yeah, for sure. It's friendship. But yeah, we met through Instagram, just following each other. And then when I moved to Edmonton, like just tried to connect, and him and I were always talking all the time and got along really, really well. And then I was alone on Christmas and he kind of just welcomed me in, and just our friendship just like blossomed from there.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, he's a good guy.
He's that kind of guy, right? And from what I understand, he treats because he does boudoir, he does some pretty, I don't know what the word is to use for his art, but it requires nudes. A lot of nudes. There you go. Thank you. Well, and because it requires a lot of trust, right, from the subject and him. So he's obviously a guy that can build that trust with people.
100%. And I especially think in like that world, male photographers definitely have a bad rap, and sometimes it's rightfully so. And he's just, the complete opposite of that. So, it sucks that there is that, am I allowed to swear?
Yes, please.
Okay. The shitheads ruin it for the good people, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I'm glad you said that, because I did want to ask you, and I swear we will get into your life, but I'm curious as to why do you think, especially photographers, but just people in general, feel the need to exert that kind of control or abuse over other people? Like, I got some ideas, but I'd like to hear you say something first on that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is I think there's multi levels to this, but I think that a part of it is just human nature. And I think that in the animalistic way, you look for vulnerabilities and you look for those open ways in. I think that humans have evolved cognitively past that point. But I think there still is that little bit there. And then, of course, then there's the male drive for control over women in that primal type of mentality. So I think that's definitely part of it. And then I also think it's just I can't really speak to the male narrative, but I think there's the male way of thinking that goes into, a woman and nudity, and therefore it's just some sense of control.
Controls, yeah. It's it's a fascinating thing to me. It's funny because I said, like, the first thing I said to Walter was, your work is very sexual. He said, well, no, it's sexual to you, the viewer, because you're choosing to make it. It's like, in the same way that a man would exert control over a woman in real life, me as the viewer, I'm exerting a certain amount of control over what is the art to me,
Totally. Yeah, and I think that even goes into like speaking to like westernized culture, like in North America, and just how we view nudity arguably so different, and each different like culture is going to experience that so differently, whether it be to more of an extreme level or more of a natural, holistic way. Like there's so many different ways, and we can only speak to our narrative and our perspective. But that really kind of goes into anything, not just nudity. Well,
it's anything. What I realized doing this show was so much of the world to me is shaped by my perception of it. And, you kind of have to just accept that you're just this imperfect person perceiving, right? But then it's like the problem is when other people try and enforce their ideas over other
Oh
folk,
yeah,
you know?
and we live in a world where people love to push their agendas onto other people, which honestly, sometimes like I catch myself doing it, and like I don't know, I'm just constantly trying to not do that, but it's difficult, especially because some people have really bad ideas.
Terrible ideas. Yeah, like I got a couple of bad ideas myself, but I try and keep them inside, you know. I don't know.
Right.
Let's shelf this for a second. Thank you for entertaining me there for a moment.
Of course.
Just to get the listeners up to speed, you consider yourself like a disability advocate for folks with specifically visual impairments, or how do you look at that?
Well, I definitely think I want to be a representative for as many different disability groups as possible. So 100%, like I would say, advocate hardcore on disability rights. And I would say that I can only put myself into the blind and brain injured category because those are the only disabilities that I have.
Gotcha.
Also, weird way of putting that, like those are the only disabilities I have. I'm supposed to have so many of them.
Yeah.
Like I can't have them all, unfortunately. But I do use my experience to try and shed light on the whole experience of a disabled people and try and use whatever platform I ever have to not just speak on my own experience, but also other issues that are going on. Because accessibility and disability rights issues and access issues are not just something that I experience. They're not just something, and they're not just something that even like I can notice more accessibility barriers than just blindness. Like, and that's the thing, like I try and urge like able-bodied people to kind of see is like, you can come across these things. You can see them. It's a choice not to. So yeah, if that kind of sums it up a bit.
It's good to know. And I guess this ties into what we were saying before, because it's like disability. It's like, well, that's relative to, because you turned me on to the social versus medical model of disability.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I educated myself on that a little bit just to get what you're talking about. And that is it, isn't it? It's like your disability is only as severe really as it is made for you. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Because you seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and that's the thing is like I am doing okay, but do I still have anxiety every single time I leave the house because I know I'm going to come across something? 100%. Now, whether that thing that I'm going to come across is harassment, whether it be just like even today was walking along and I have my cane, luckily, I mean, I guess, but my cane then goes into just a hole that's in the sidewalk. And just so if I didn't have my cane and my cane didn't go into it, then guess what's going in there? My ankle. And then, so there's all those things. And that is definitely exhausting, where some days I really can't leave my home because the second I leave my home, I become blind. Like that's the moment it happens for me in my home. Like I still have those moments where like I touch something and it literally scares the shit out of me. Actually, maybe that's not literal, but still, you know, it's those things. So I do get by really well, and I think that goes into just a personality trait of sometimes I don't know when to quit. But I also think it goes into just sometimes it's too much out in the world, and people see me in such a small context.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I was going to make a joke about shitting myself and that being the disability I have, but well. So maybe just to get people really, I didn't want to waste too much or take too much time to make you do this, but how do you describe your condition or the disability, so to speak, that you have, just so people can at least understand what you're working with? For
sure. So like I'll go from the shortest form to kind of like the longest form. Shortest form is I'm blind and brain injured. That's wow, exciting. Now there's so many follow-up questions to that.
Right.
So the brain injury does cause the vision loss. So my specific visual condition is called right homogeneous hemianopia. Now, is that easy to say? No. Basically what it is like it's a neurological condition. The portion of my brain that controls the right hemisphere of my visual field is damaged / gone out of my brain. I literally have a hole in my head. I literally am an airhead. So what that means is that I only have left peripheral vision. So essentially from like this chunk over, that's all quote unquote normal vision. It would be the same of that hemisphere for the average seer. And then everything else is gone. It's not black. It's not it's just it's gone. It's when you put your hand behind your head, you know, when your visual field fades out, it doesn't become black, it becomes nothing. So it's not like closing your eyes, because when you close your eyes you still have light perception through your eyelids. Yeah, it's just literally just a small chunk of the pizza. And then the visual aspect is only the major thing that's focused on as like a disability component. But there's so many other things that go into my brain injury that people, I don't really speak about it much, but so many people that like know me personally, see me on a day-to-day basis, me personally, those brain injury components of my disability are very, very prominent.
Okay.
Very prominent. And there's something that I personally like, yeah, having a brain injury sucks. Being blind is like whatever, like you get used to it. Brain injury, I don't think you ever get used to it.
Well, okay. Thank you for saying so. Because my impression was before we started that your brain injury is the cause of your reduced visual field, but you're saying there's more to it than that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like there's just the biggest thing for me. So where my damage is in my brain is left occipital parietal lobe. And so the parietal lobe focuses a lot on like the processing of information. So my understanding of things, and that's where it's interesting, even if I were to have full vision, I still wouldn't be able to read the same way that you do. I still wouldn't be able, because that visual processing of what I'm absorbing and then my brain's putting in, like it can't do it. So I do understand the world differently than other people. Now, how can I understand that when this is all I remember, this is all I know, this is my reality? Not to mention like my personality shifted after, as you know, we kind of mentioned, just like I have no filter. That's another aspect of it. Extreme neurofatigue, which, you know, everyone kind of understands, like, oh yeah, you get tired at the end of the day. But it's like, okay, well, imagine that you get tired at the end of the day. And I think that I speak quite eloquently. I think I speak quite well. The second I'm tired, that's gone.
Oh,
like, it's gone. Because my brain just can't process the ability to translate a thought into words.
Now, at what age did this occur?
14. So it would have been in 2008. So I'm turning 29 just around the corner. And so it's been longer like this than it has like anything else. But yeah, 14.
Do you clock those moments as being a traumatic experience for you? Like, is there still a lot of work to do as far as putting that into perspective?
Oh yeah, constantly. The stages of grief are constant, because it's like every single achievement or life moment is just like a reminder that I have to do it differently. And that it was different at a certain point. And I don't even have a memory of what that different was and what that felt like and what that looked like. And then that kind of like plays in my head with quite a bit of a role too. So it's less so about like processing now, like what I went through as a 14-year-old girl.
Right.
And it's more so processing how that moment and what happened then is still impacting me 15 years later and will impact me for the rest of my life.
Now, if we keep going down this road, is it going to become depressing for you, or is this something that you don't mind talking about this? Because it's a lot of people would probably just, I don't know, just would not have the sort of zest that you have for life in this condition.
I think like you never know what someone's response will be like until you kind of go through it. You see this now, and as you know, we kind of just discussed, like I still am processing and grieving and going through those stages. But no, when it first happened, like it took me 7 years of acceptance. Like there was 7 years where I was like a closeted blind person. I would hide my cane. The amount of times I would do a guide dog application and I would back out every single time, because the second I have a dog, then I can't just fold up my cane and hide it. Right. So then I have to really own the fact that I am the blind girl. I am that one blind girl, I am going to have to deal with these constant interactions. Yeah, I feel like I kind of veered off from the question there a little bit.
No, I don't remember what the question was. I say it and then it goes away from my mind and I just let you go. Poof. Yeah, it's one way to live. I guess I just, do you dig in onto, because maybe we should say you also have a pretty interesting looking life, or at least you make it appear interesting. Like you enjoy life and you're very good looking, you're very attractive. Like you're out there, you're someone that I think people should admire. But is there a reason that you choose to just live as you do in the face of this difficulty?
Oh, for sure. And I think that goes into, if something was meant to happen to me for a certain reason, and I was the person that this was supposed to happen to, I've always been a loudmouth. I've always been opinionated.
Okay.
I have always been such a strong, like when I believe in something, I want it to be known and I want it to be heard. My dad always told me my whole life, and I even have them tattooed on my wrist, but he's like, be seen, be heard, be read, like be out there, get your voice heard. And then like the other thing he told me was listen, learn, lead, like listen from your experiences, learn from your experiences, lead your experiences. So I have that inherently in me. And then when like I do definitely make a conscious effort to put myself out there. And it really does go into the amount of times I've heard from people that they've never met a blind person, that they've never come across this. And that always kind of shocks me. Because if you just look at like statistically, like if 1 in 3 people, or maybe it's like 1 in 4 people, I could be getting my stats wrong. Don't at me. But it's like, there's a commonality of like people that do know blind people. So then when I hear this so often, I'm like, why is it that my demographic doesn't know this? Why does my demographic, like, why is it you're pretty for a blind girl? Why is it all these things? And so for me, like the second I enter out into the world, it is going to be a moment where I can educate people and I can advocate for something literally by just existing as who I am. And I think like, I do know too, like you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. So, if people, even when I decided to do like an online presence, it was always about, okay, well, people are going to look at a pretty girl and they're going to say, okay, here's a pretty girl, I want to look at this. And then they're going to be like, oh crap, she actually has something to say.
Oh, great.
She actually has something to teach me. Okay. And so now I have like this wonderful audience of people who actually do value that.
Wow.
And it's kind of, I don't know, that's definitely what like keeps the passion for it going and makes me feel like I'm kind of onto something.
Right on.
Yeah. And I do think like too, like, if I am seen as conventionally attractive and that's a genetic lottery win, then I may as well use that to my advantage.
100%. You'd be stupid not to.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not stupid.
Hey, I never said you were. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it strikes me that you're sort of living your activism, right? Like, I mean, activism in a lot of ways, in a lot of different ways is, well, whatever. That's one road. There's that radical side of it, right? Where it's like, I'm obviously have lost control of my own life. So now I'm going to go and rage against, the system.
Yeah.
But you're like a more holistic or a more organic activist where just by being you, allows you to raise awareness.
Yeah, there's definitely, apologies if you hear horns, and people are crazy here.
Edmonton.
But exactly. I'd say I definitely do take a holistic approach to it, and I do also take an active, like, conscious effort to it too. Okay. I would say, like, am I the person that is going and doing more like speaking gigs and going and talking to businesses? No, and I do that once again, like on purpose, because I know I could do that. And I have even thought numerous times about doing like a consulting brand, but I don't really want to do that because I think that's performative change. I don't really think people actually care about that, and it contributes to like a monetary gain. I don't want it for a monetary gain. I want it for a social change. And I'd rather do that by making funny, cool content and by normalizing it by doing that than by going and being like, hi there, my name is, and just like going into this is why, and this is why, just for people to, I don't know, for businesses or whatever to feel like they're better than because they care for 5 seconds.
Exactly. It's something like whatever, virtue signaling or whatever. And they probably get some kind of tax benefit from it. Like it's not really real in any sense.
Yeah. And if I have the control over it and I can control my voice and I can, once again, I want to normalize it. So why wouldn't I try and have that conversation in a normal capacity of just like human to human type way? Why couldn't I do it by, trying to make people laugh? Like I love blind jokes. I love making, people be like, oh, that's a hot blind chick. Like I love breaking those norms and those things just by existing. And I really do believe that you can make more change by doing that than you can by just like bashing on people constantly. I mean, I do love to roast people, don't get me wrong, but
hey, I mean, it's a little bit of roasting maybe is okay, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But
or a lot sometimes.
Or a lot. Okay.
It happens sometimes.
I mean, people don't respond well to bashing necessarily, but now do you find a certain amount of that like call out culture or accountability is necessary?
I think accountability is necessary. I just think call out culture doesn't work because, like I said, I feel like it's performative. Like I feel like it's not making social changes. And what needs to happen for genuine change to any sort of community is action. It is an action of thought, is an action of feeling, that when you see a blind person, you're not like, whoa, what do I do? Or I'm going to try and be really silent because I'm going to really try and make them like, I feel awkward. So I'm just going to be really quiet. Or I'm going to grab someone without their consent because I assume that they're crossing the street incorrectly. The statistics of like 83% of blind people in Canada are unemployed. That's not because blind people are incapable. That is literally just because of a social model. And so I think that those changes those social changes aren't going to happen by shaming people. It's just like, I don't know what proof of psychology would show otherwise. But shame generally just causes like trauma responses, not actual like genuine, authentic change.
Right. Yeah. I love all that. That's very well said.
Thank you.
I had a girl on the podcast a long, long time ago who was very woke, and that was cool.
Yeah.
To get fed my lunch for 2 hours about why I was wrong. But she used the word call in, and so in a way that's what you're doing versus call out, right?
Yeah.
Like by building an audience around your brand, which is about awareness, does it feel more like, I think that's so funny because, and you said that you did some dancing as well, right? And it was like people came for one thing, got another thing, and then learned a lesson. Like it's almost like a movie,
Exactly. And that's really what it is. It's you're coming for one thing and you're going to leave with another thing. And like that to me is really cool. I don't necessarily believe in like that call in versus call out.
Sure.
Or at least not to like a one or the other. I think it's sometimes is appropriate for each thing. I definitely do call people out. I call organizations out, and I have no problem with doing that. I have no problem with being that angry, militant, blind person. I don't care. Like I really don't care. When it's appropriate though. Like when it's appropriate. Like I know that sometimes me trying to bring people in and create change and stuff like that's not going to work. Like it's not going to work if people don't want to be a part of my community. And then I'm just going to call them out and be like, you're a dickhead. Like you are not a good person. You are not. And I am very vocal that way. And I'm very like another one of those areas I lack a filter. It's just like, I have no problem with, calling people out. And I think that goes into too is like I love being proven wrong. Like if someone can prove to me wrong, like if I call something out and they're like, no, here is how it all is accessible, or how, I mean, I can only speak, I'm speaking to that, but like really
Sure.
with anything, I'm like, if you prove to me that that is how it should be, then like, by all means.
Mm-hmm.
I love constructive criticism. I love an argument. Generally speaking, though, in that area, I don't get much back talk other than like a big one, or an example I could use would be just people thinking like the faking blindness aspect.
Oh,
Yeah, and like this whole like, oh, you're faking blindness for money, you're doing this for clout, you're doing this, and it's just like, come on, prove it to me.
sure.
Prove it to me.
Right,
Prove
right.
it to me how that ever would work. Prove to me with any of the statistics that are out there, any sort of that someone would get more attention and positive attention for being disabled. Prove it to me. I would love for someone to prove it.
Right. To go through the effort of pretending to be disabled. I mean, you would have to have a disability of some kind to do that.
No, you wouldn't have to have a disability. You would have to be like a real sick person, like really sick. And like, especially, I have a tattoo that says like, it's of my cane and it says still blind underneath it. And I have that intentionally for those moments. I mean, it was a moment of trying to accept my like blindness and be like, no matter what I do, I'm still blind at the end of the day. No matter how much I try and hide it, I'm still blind. No matter what I do, I'm still blind. No matter how I'm perceived by the world, still blind. No matter how much people think I'm faking it, still blind.
Still blind. Now, I sometimes see folks who they place their identity, they make their identity about their belonging in a group, right? I'm left wing, I'm right wing,
Yeah, people love that.
People love that. Now, it's tougher, I guess. How do you come out on that? Because obviously, because it affects your every waking moment and sleeping moment, your entire life is about your. But do you base it on a group identity, or do you still see yourself very much as an individual?
Are you meaning in the context of like, because I don't know if now you're asking me a left or right question, but if you're asking me about the blindness, like, do I feel part of like a blind community kind of thing?
I guess that's one for sure, but I guess I'm curious as to how much of is disability the right phrase here? Like
I would say.
Yeah. How much of your disability is your identity? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So there's maybe two part answer to that question.
Sure.
The one part would be like, to me, it's everything. Because like you said, like it's every single waking moment. I don't have a choice of turning it off. Now for other people, I think they definitely could be seeing it as like, yeah, you're putting it out there. You're calling yourself this. You're, making your whole thing about your blindness and stuff. And, but once again, it's like, from my perspective, I don't turn it off. But because I don't turn it off, it also is not a part of my identity at all. Like, once again, in my existence, am I thinking like when I'm at home just on my own, oh yeah, I have to remember to pour my glass with my finger in it because I'm blind. Like, remember that.
Right.
I'm not thinking that. This is just my world. But at the same time, it is a part of my identity. And every single thing I do, I will always have that perspective that is going to be different from everyone else, whether I like it or not. But at the same time, like, I also like, I love doing stuff. Right. Like, I don't want to let anything hold me back. I want to experience the world as much as I can, while also recognizing that I do have limitations.
That's why you nailed it. Well, I assume you nailed it. That felt right. I guess my issue is that there are so many, I don't want to be this guy all the time, but like, there are plenty of folks in the world who sometimes seem to put themselves as being more disabled or more traumatized, or, victimization because of the points they can score. But this doesn't seem that,
it is
obviously.
And it is for that like victimhood, right? Like, there definitely is. And will I say like, yeah, I'm a victim of ableism? Hell yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Like, I am. Like, I do experience all that. And it really breaks me down, and I don't want to tap into anyone else, which is why I'm doing all of this. It's for my community, which is then kind of goes into like your last few questions of being like, yeah, I do feel part of a community in that. But at the same time, I'm multifaceted as a human being. And when I cannot be a victim, that's amazing. Like that's amazing. Like when I can just go out and just be me, that is amazing. When I have friends that I can trust, that I can go and do things, or I have been a guide dog user, and then during COVID my dog retired, and then the world just kind of fell into chaos. Right. And so getting a dog wasn't really a possibility. And so I had to go back to my cane life. But when I have a dog, like I am so much more free to do everything I want to. And that's something I've really, really been missing out on, because when I have my cane, I definitely have to rely on other people more. Yeah.
The dog retired.
Yeah.
Did you have any say in that, or?
Well, yes and no. I did have a say in it. And each different school, guide dog school, is different. But with her, it's just kind of like an age factor, motivation.
Sure.
During COVID too, with all the parameters, super like not blind friendly. Like, how do you teach a dog that you are guided by? Now, dog, you have to stand 6 feet apart from people. I got a lot of people yelling at me for a lot of different things. Oh yeah. If I'm going down the wrong way, if I need to be going down this way and I should be going that way, and now I'm crossing paths, now I'm in someone's space. Like, it was a whole thing, and it just really was not like just. Yeah, not good for a dog, and not good for a blind person in that world. So yeah, that was part of the retirement, which is really unfortunate, because she was 7 years old when COVID started, and now she's just over 9.5, and so she's in that stage of her life where she just doesn't have the motivation to not make me bump into things.
Fair enough. She did all she could for you.
Exactly. She's like, listen, you're on your own now. So she's living her wonderful retired life with my dad and his dog, and on acreage, and she's just living the life.
Life's good. She put in the work, and now she
did. She did. I know. Selfishly, I'm like, but I want you here, Fran. And then for her, she's like, well, what purpose would that be for me? I'm now a dog that's going everywhere, to now a dog that's just staying at home all day. What's that about?
Looking after your ass? No, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she deserves it.
Does every impaired person get a dog if they want one, or that's probably a whole issue, right?
Well, that's a whole different thing too. So no, not every blind person can get a dog. There's a lot of steps to getting a guide dog. It's way more complicated and far longer than most people think it is.
Okay.
So don't even get me started on talking about fake dogs but so sorry, what was the question?
It was more of just a statement. I was just curious, is it easy to get a guide dog if you need one?
Oh, yes, going into that. So no, there's some blind people that if they have too much vision, you can't, because blindness is such a spectrum,
right?
Like such a spectrum. So people who are legally blind, like just in that category, like there's people who are legally blind who can walk around without a cane, without a dog, who can read, like you can still be very like a sighted functionality with legal blindness. So you can't always get a dog in that aspect also. Given that visual disabilities statistically are more so with an older demographic too, you want to make sure the dogs are moving. Like they need to be doing their job. So if you're just kind of staying at home, not really going many places, a dog's probably not the right fit for you. The dogs do want to do stuff. They want to be active, and the schools also want those dogs to be utilized, because there's not going to be enough dogs for every single blind person. But
that makes sense. Yeah, the dogs want to be out there partying and
100%.
Whatever else, smoking up on the balcony and going to the Eskimos game. I don't know, whatever you're up to.
Well, I mean that's what my dogs deal with me doing anyway. So to be fair.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't know. It's very weird. I donated to the CNIB once. Just the guy got me at the door, and okay, and now it's
fine.
Well, admittedly, yeah. And then now I get a calendar every year from them. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. But I'll bite my tongue on my opinions of the CNIB.
No, please let it rip.
No, I'll bite my tongue, or I'll tell you another time.
Don't do that.
Off camera,
okay, fine.
Off camera. I have a people know of me in that world.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, don't do this to me.
Too much.
Okay,
Can't
all
say
right.
too much.
All right, fine. Fine. Well, this is over then. Goodbye. You're gonna start start keeping secrets.
I never said secrets. Well, you know what? Yeah, it is secret. I'm mysterious.
Well, to that end, then, as someone who goes around Edmonton and lives a fun life, how inclusive is Edmonton on a scale of 1 to 10? Or, inclusive, ableist, disabled friendly?
Yeah, no, good question, actually, because I have lived a lot of different places in Canada, like a lot of different places. And I love that, actually, because I love comparing accessibility to different places that I go. So I can say, actually, Edmonton transit is better than people, I think, give it credit for. Because I'll say it, like Toronto, I'd put in the same category. And you'd probably expect like Toronto to be a little bit better. It's not. In fact, yeah, I put it at the same category, if not worse.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So the transit, the train line, like I think it's really useful. The timings that they put it out there for. I hate the buttons to open the door, but I guess I understand it to a certain extent. But those are not very blind friendly. There's a lot of the beep boops, as I call them, but the audible signals on crosswalks. There's many of those. I'd say far more than the majority of cities I've experienced. Where Edmonton really lacks in accessibility, in my opinion, is, which shouldn't really be a surprise because I'm sure drivers will agree with me in a different context. The sidewalks suck. Like the sidewalks are so bad.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm really currently really actively working on 104th Street. They love to take over the sidewalks with their patios. That's kind of like a thing.
Sure thing.
And I recently learned that I guess that restaurants can get a permit to have a patio that takes up 2 meters of the sidewalk.
Okay.
But the majority of sidewalks are 2 meters wide. So bylaw wise, they are breaking bylaw, but they also get a city permit. So it's a thing that I'm working on right now because the city kind of, I don't know how no one's brought this to their attention. Like, I don't know how, like, I'm the person that's like, I just come on in here and I move here and I'm like, hey, did you know, like, that you can't really do this?
Right.
Like, you can't do this? And they're like, oh, shit. Because we kind of said they could do it, but you're right, they can't do it. So now what do we do? So yeah, the sidewalks in that aspect, as well as just like the potholes and everything, is just not so great. And frankly, this is maybe like a different accessibility issue and may sound a little bit controversial. But the crime and homelessness in Edmonton is a accessibility barrier, frankly.
Sure.
When there are people that are sitting in the stairways shooting up, not really great. I don't really want to walk into that, and can't really get around it. So yeah, that's a whole other accessibility thing. And that, I would say, I've never experienced that in any other city.
Really?
Yeah. And I lived in Vancouver for a period of time too. So
that's interesting.
A lot too, because they got 10 cities going on over there.
Well, yeah. But what's the difference there though? Like,
I don't know. Edmonton has a real issue with homelessness and with drug use. Yeah. So why those two things are, I have no idea. I'm the newcomer. I just moved here like October. So someone please explain to me why this is such a thing here.
I wish I could. It's worse than it's ever been that I've ever seen. It seems like it's worse every time I go downtown.
Yeah. Every second. I agree. Like, it seems like every single day it's just like, wow. So
it's interesting though, like, just for conversation, when you see somebody using drugs in a public place, you'd have to say that that's their disability expressing itself, no? Or
I wouldn't say it's disability.
Okay.
I do think that addiction or mental health issues, I'm going to sound so controversial. People are going to hate me. Wow. I think physical disabilities are different. Bottom line, I think that's really what it comes down to. I think anything that can be medicated or treated in certain types of ways, it's different. I don't have any treatment. I don't have anything I can do.
Right.
This is it. So that's where I think that it's different quite significantly, and I don't think that physical disabilities get enough representation and talked about in that type of way, because it's very popular now for mental health advocates, and it's very that is trendy right now. And I also I don't agree with, like, I don't know, I just don't want to like have I'll have empathy and I'll have acknowledgement of that experience, but at the same time, I won't discredit things that have, I don't know. There's some element of choice. There's some element of working through your addictions, and there's no element of me working through this. So. It's different.
Hey, I love to hear it. That's a point of view I'd never even considered. Like, I never even considered those two issues together. So thank you for,
you're welcome. That's where I try to have, because I can be, like I said, like that militant blind person.
Right.
That's like, why don't you know about this? Why don't you know about this? And then I'm like, okay, well, at the same time, like, why would they know about it? Like, I want people to know about it, but at the same time, like, we're all so invested in our own experiences, and we can really only know our own perspectives unless we challenge our way of thinking. And I think for the most part, people don't want to challenge the way they're thinking. So, how much can I really fault people? Like, there's some things I fault people for. Like, I don't like when people just message me out of the blue and are like, when did you go blind? And it's like, you don't even know my name. Like, what are you providing me? Like, what are you providing me? I would love for anyone who wants to ask me any sort of like question out of the blue like that, without even how are you benefiting me? Because you clearly want to know something. You want to use my time to know.
Right.
So what?
that was an interesting turn. Does that happen a lot, where people just out of the blue come at you?
Daily.
Really?
Daily in multiple contexts. I'm like on the street. I have random people, like, not even kidding. I'll just be standing there on the corner, even with someone, and they'll be like, "Are you blind?" And it's like, okay,
no, it's Halloween.
You've got a person that's there with a cane. If you really want to look down, you can see my tattoo. Like, if all signs point to this, then why is the conclusion not this? And even when not most recently, there's a lot of things that's happened, but recently, going into a restaurant, and the host, this was during like the Oilers playoffs, but the host says, is that for the refs? And he was meaning my cane, but I don't see what he's gesturing at. So I'm just really confused. I'm like, what's for the refs? Like, I'm not wearing anything. Like, I don't get it.
Or in stripes.
My girlfriend was like, and I was like, what's going on? Like, why is everyone acting all weird? Like, I don't get it. And then she's like, oh, your cane. And I was like, oh, you're meaning like I'm trying to dress up as the refs because I'm what? Oof. And so that's a person I have no problem calling someone out in that context.
Let's call them out right now. Where did they work and what was their name?
Brew House downtown. Oh, no. What their name was, I have no idea.
He's fired. Yeah.
He's fired. He's out. No, and I didn't even say anything because that's just
What can you say?
I think he had his like, oh shit, what did I just say? Right. And I hope people continue to have like those moments. But yeah, I could tell you so many stories about the amount of what I consider harassment. People like had a group of men walk up to me, and one of them put his hands in front of his eyes, and he's like, "Hey, can I use your cane, bro?"
No.
And it's like, dude, like, I'm almost 30. Like, I'm almost 30.
I'm too old for this shit. Yeah.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, Alyssa, I got bullied in high school.
Right.
I am too old to get bullied nowadays. Like, no more of this. I left high school. I thought it was like, oh, it gets better. It gets better.
Yeah, it gets better. Actually.
When though?
Yeah.
When though?
Well, never. And it seems like now you're probably more tuned into it, but like, what is going on in the culture these days? Is it selfishness? Is it ignorance? Is it stupidity? Like,
no, I don't think it's any of. Well, I think it's just a very internalized experience. I think it's just is that coming from people because they feel very unheard, very unrepresented, or is it just because we're hearing about it more because everyone kind of has a social platform where they can get heard? I think all these things have existed always. And I think
Yeah.
in a lot of ways there has been some progressive movement forward. Actually, I should say there has been progressive movement forward. Like blind people used to be like institutionalized, right? Like there's that's how the CNIB was founded. It was an institution for the blind. So I'm very aware of what my past community has been, and I want to say that things have gotten better, but it's still yeah, I do think that it just goes in. I think it's just social media and people have a voice now. So you just hear those things more so.
You hear more about it. It seems, yeah, we're more aware of how much suffering is going on and how many
issues.
And how many unique experiences are being had in this world by people with all sorts of lives that they're living, bodies that they're in.
Which is kind of cool.
It is.
Like in a way, it is cool. It is exhausting for sure, because you're like, you don't matter, you don't matter, you don't matter. But it's everyone just really wanting to feel like their voice matters, and it's this balance of finding the yes, your voice matters, but it also doesn't. And I can even say that for my voice, right? Like my voice matters, but only if people want to listen. If people really don't want to listen, if people really don't want to care, they're not going to care. And I have to accept that, which I don't like doing, but kind of got to.
You kind of got it.
It
is what it is. It's just, it must be tough to feel yourself burdened by your situation, but then to also apparently be a burden to other people's stupidity who like, they're going to use you to now educate themselves on the street corner.
That's exactly what it is. It really is. And it goes into like, I'd say burden is the best word, because it's like this burden of proof. It's feeling like I have to speak about it because I want things to be better, but then, and also because people have this curiosity. And so I want to tap into that. Like anytime someone has curiosity, like I want to do that, but then also like, but yeah, to what extent, like at what extent? And I've even had to really find that balance within myself, because it's exhausting. And it goes into your question about identity, and like if I like just fully identify with this and kind of make it a part of my identity, and it's like, yeah, it's when it becomes too much of my identity and I just constantly see the issues that I and my community face, it wears on the mind quite a bit. Yeah.
How much of that, I've asked this to other people who, whatever, how much of that do you take on, like, and how, obviously you can't distance yourself from your condition, but how do you ever have to sort of step back and say, I can't be this person all the time?
100%. Like I used to stream on Twitch, and I have a really great following on Twitch, and I miss Twitch like crazy. But it really messed with my head constantly, because I'm having like swarms of thousands of people say then the same thing. And I love it. Once again, I love it in a way because I'm able to hit all these communities, but it burns me out because I don't turn it off. It doesn't turn off for me. Right. So the second I hit end stream, it doesn't end for me. It may end for all those people, but it doesn't end for me. And then how much of that? And then okay, well, now I have to go to the grocery store after my stream. Okay, well, it still doesn't end for me. And it's all these areas. It still doesn't end. And I want that choice of when it ends. I want that choice of when I can turn it off, because there's not many opportunities that I can.
Yeah. Now, are there moments in your life when you feel less, like, what are the things you do that sort of relieve you of feeling burdened that way? Like, are there,
For sure. Yeah. Dancing is like one of my biggest hobbies. It makes me feel so free. It makes me feel so connected to my body and my existence. And I don't feel like that blind girl when I'm dancing. I feel like I'm just very connected to the music. So dance is definitely that. Music just in general is that for me. One of the reasons actually that I fell so much in love with like dancing on a pole is that it's so tactile and you have a grounding point.
Sure.
I don't feel blind when I do it because I know where I am at all times. And that's a really, really cool thing that I think is like a side that most people don't really understand, that. But yeah, that's an area. Also just like I just love to, which kind of goes into the music thing. I just love to like relax and smoke weed and
Nice.
do nothing. And
Yeah.
that makes me feel very like away from it.
Ah.
Like that is my self-care moments. Also too, like when I'm with certain people who really do, I am fortunate, like I have come across people, there's not many, but I have come across people who really do understand how to help me integrate into the world. And those people are the ones that like, yeah, are super, super cool. Like just yesterday, I went for a walk without my cane or anything, and to just, just Tim Hortons down the block with a friend. And that was beautiful because I was like, no one knows. No one knows. No one knows. And that feels really cool because that's like, no one has to know. I can just live in my own internal world. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. Getting high, that's cool.
That's what I like to do. I like to smoke weed.
Hey, I can't fault you. I did that for many years and then kind of had to stop because it was making me weird. But if it starts making you weird, promise me.
I'm weird.
Well, okay, too late, right?
I'm already weird. Like, I'm a reject of society. It's okay.
Okay.
But if it makes me more weird and like in a way that's not good, then yeah, maybe I'll cool down on it. But for right now, it's my happy place. Hey, I'm not going to take that away.
Let it rip, man. It's legal and it's pretty cheap. So
exactly, right?
There's
worse
things.
And you can even grow it yourself.
Grow it yourself. Did you install that pole in your apartment yourself?
I sure did. I don't know if it's
it's right. Yeah, we can see it.
It's right beside. Okay, yeah. So you can see it. I'm like, wow, I never knew. But yeah, I did that myself. They're really easy to install, to be honest.
Are they? Okay. You just you just ordered on Amazon or what?
No, I got mine from it's called Loop It Pole.
Okay.
I actually wrote an article for them.
Oh, nice.
Just to kind of about just what dancing does for me and everything as a blind person. But yeah, they're just you essentially are just creating pressure from the ceiling and the floor. That's how it's all there. So you just kind of twist it on up and then it just pushes up and make sure you got a joist
right, I was gonna say,
in the ceiling. It'll pop through, make sure that it's secure and make sure that it is plumb, not level, because my dad would be so proud of me in this moment for saying that. Well, but so make sure that, otherwise things will not fully be sealed. And but I've done it enough times myself that, it's pretty simple at this point.
And the neighbors love it. The downstairs neighbors.
I don't have downstairs neighbors, so I'm lucky with that.
Okay.
Otherwise, they probably wouldn't like me very much, but so be it.
Well,
so be it.
These people and their rights, that's a sickness. Just let the girl dance, right?
Just let the girl dance.
Thank you for watching this episode of Self-Control, How to Build a Better Life. I hope you enjoyed listening to Charity's story and thinking about what it means to be disabled in a largely abled world. And as well, I hope if you're coming to this show in the hopes of building a better life for yourself, you found it interesting, at least, or constructive to think about what it means to live your values and how there's a tendency to be performative in what we believe, but there's also a difference in living that. And it's difficult. It's not easy. I struggle with it myself. And as well, I hope you thought about what it means to form your identity in the face of immutable characteristics like disability and the tendency to base our identity on a group belonging. Again, if you're looking to build a better life, identity creation is something that we need to think deeply about. So those two topics for sure I'm going to follow up on very soon in the coming days with a long form episode, or I should say it won't be that long. I'm going to follow up on those two topics in a solo episode and think more about that. And of course, I struggle with it. I don't ever want you guys to think that I'm some kind of guru coming down from the mountain. We're going to work on these things together, no doubt. And of course, most importantly, stay tuned next week for the second part of my conversation with Charity. We spoke about her time as a sex worker. Those are her words. Her multiple banishments from TikTok. What does it look like to create media versus consume media? Why is it important to treat both sides of the spectrum with respect if you're on the spectrum to begin with? And what are Charity's hopes for the future? Could she be a mother someday? And we ended that discussion with something I didn't necessarily expect to get into: birth control, the hormonal apocalypse of our time, and abortion. And these are large political, social concerns, but I found them timely because they have to do with our person, ourself. And we'll talk about that going forward. We'll talk about the way in which large social forces, which may not have our best interest in mind, govern and rule our body, and how part of a better life is taking control of our body. I'll look forward to talking with you all again then. And until then, remember, better is possible.